everyone. I'm Chelsea. I'm Peter's Digital Campaigns Manager. Peter it stands for People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. We are the world's largest animal rights organization with over 9 million supporters worldwide. We campaign against speciesism, which is, if you don't know, the misguided belief that some species are superior to others. And we have like a variety of campaigns. There's so many. We actually have around 100 action alerts on engaging networks, so different emails, targets, and petitions. And they vary from urging airlines to stop shipping monkeys to laboratories, to calling on the council to, block farms and block farms that have been put through. So today I'm going to focus on a really recent campaign that we won. So this is really exciting talk for me because this is a victory that we've had after 2 years, which is really, really huge. So, and I'm going to talk you through how we encouraged Jet2 Holidays to stop promoting and selling tickets to marine parks. Yeah. So just to give you a bit of context, as I'm speaking to you all right now, orcas are languishing in marine parks. They are kept in tanks so small that they can barely swim around in more than a few circles. It's really, I don't want to bring it up, but if you all remember lockdown and how horrific that was, just think about orcas who are in marine parks now and they have no end to lockdown. There is no escape for them. They're separated from their families and they're often forced to produce, do demeaning tricks just for entertainment. So we're trying to tackle that. We're trying to free orcas from marine parks, and we're doing that through a couple of different paths. One of those paths that we're taking is calling on travel providers to stop selling tickets and promoting marine parks. And we're chipping away at the industry one travel provider at a time. So this time we focused on Jet2 Holidays. So it started in August 2022. That's when we started the campaign and we made Jet2 our top priority. And 2 years later, we had a victory in April 2024. So how we did this was, it was a huge team effort. We had campaigns, we had press, we had a celebrity liaison team, we had social media, we had digital campaigns. It was a huge, huge effort. And so even though I'm going to be talking today about the email side of things, I definitely cannot take credit for everything because this was a big team effort. It started with corporate outreach. They reached out to Jet2 and said, please, can you do the right thing for orcas? And Jet2 said no. So we went ahead and did this. So this is just a couple of images of some of the things that we did, but this is definitely not all we did. I don't think there are enough slides in the world to fill the amount of protests and different projects and campaigns that we led against Jet2. So we held protest after protest. We disrupted the Global Travel Awards. We worked with celebrities. So Love Island actually Jet2 Holidays sponsor Love Island. So we actually worked with Belle Hassan, Faye Winters, and Olivia Bowen, and quite a few big celebrities to get that message out far and wide and use their compassion and fame to help orcas. We also got a former orca trainer to write to Jet2 Holidays as well, and just call on them to do the right thing. So it was a really, really big project, and it spanned a lot of different teams within that. But me specifically here today to talk about emails. What I really wanted to do was bury Jet2 Holidays in an avalanche of emails. I wanted them to know that the public were really disappointed in what they were doing and to know that everyone is calling on them to make this change. So I actually ended up getting over 100,000 people to write to Jet2 Holidays. And send a message through engaging networks using that email to target feature. I also got supporters to target them on social media, so potentially sharing our action alert on social media or commenting on Jet2 Holidays socials. So segmenting the audiences and the supporter journeys, I sent around one Jet2 Holidays email per month, and that email on average generated around 4,000 emails, which is how we got to over 100,000 actions overall. To begin with, I would ask supporters to use our email to target, and then I would follow up a month later and ask them to take an action on social media. And again, like I said, maybe that was sharing our action alert, or perhaps it was asking them to post on X or to go to Instagram and comment on some of their social media posts. I needed to continuously engage with supporters who have taken action, because I know that they're our reliable audience and I can call on them to take action whenever I need that help and support. And I didn't want to let the campaign fizzle. I didn't want Jet2 Holidays to think, oh, they've forgotten, we're still selling tickets. I needed to keep that pressure on and keep everyone taking action, which is quite a hard thing to do because that does create campaign fatigue. But the way that I would kind of tackle this is having like 3 or 4 variations of each email every single month. So I would have really segmented emails. One email might call on people to use the action alert if they've not done so before. Maybe I would ask them to share it or comment on social media or forward the email to a friend or something like that. So I would always think about which supporters have taken which action, and we would send multiple versions of that same email. So we'd have the same message, the same email hook, but it would have different variations. So for new supporters who have never heard of our Jet2 campaign, it was absolutely fine to kind of ask them to go and use our email to target. But for engaged supporters who have heard of this campaign, bombarding them with the same campaign topic can create compassion fatigue, and people can get very bored very quickly of hearing you go on and on and on about Jet2 Holidays. So to try and combat that compassion fatigue, I would always make sure I use a new email hook. And those email hooks can be anything from an Orcas died in the marine park this morning, or perhaps it's Peter's held a protest, or Love Island has started, urge the sponsor to do the right thing, that sort of thing. So I'd always make sure that there was a new campaign hook so that I can continue to send those emails every single month without people getting too sick of us. So I've segregated the audience and I've got a new hook, but when it actually comes to writing the email, I really heavily rely on this, what I called like the winning email formula, but I've actually heard people talk about it and refer to it as the so what theory before, so I don't know if anybody's familiar with this, but essentially the so what theory refers to 4 key points that you include in an email. So that's the why now, the problem, the solution, and what that person can do. So for example, the why now could be an orca has died in a marine park and I'm rushing to tell you. The problem is that orcas don't belong in marine parks and majority die prematurely, far closer than the age expectancy. And the solution is that we end marine parks, basically. And what that person can do is tell Jet2 Holidays to stop financially supporting marine parks. These 4 points are super critical, and I make sure I include them in every single email that I send. That I always actually include them in our email to target letters as well, so the emails that are being sent to Jet2 Holidays, I include these points as well. And you can use it for everything, fundraising emails, advocacy, email to targets, letters to MPs. It's just a very good basis for any kind of email or letter that you're sending. However, they don't actually have to be in a particular order, and I actually find personally that leading with the problem creates far more engagement. People that are reading their emails because they care about animals and that's their main priority. They want to hear about the things that are happening and they want to know what they can do to help. So I do find starting with that problem catches their attention first and really motivates them to take action. So the way that I would prefer to write an email would be the problem. So orcas belong in the ocean, but marine parks are imprisoning them in cramped tanks. The solution is let's help free orcas by cutting off financial support to marine parks. The why now could be Jet2 Holidays has an annual general meeting tomorrow. Let's make sure that this is at the forefront of their agenda. And then what that person can do is email Jet2 Holidays right now. So kind of mixing it up a little bit. And definitely I think testing with your audience is the best way to figure out what works best for you. But I definitely find that leading with the problem is the best. So it's also important to note that even though this is what I consider to be the best email formula, and it's definitely the best way to compose my emails, audiences do differ, and so to try and understand my audience a little bit better, I exported 12 months worth of email data from engaging networks. So I used that export feature, downloaded the world's biggest Excel spreadsheet you've ever seen in your life, and spent hours and hours going through it, sort of having my top performing emails up there and then the bottom emails, bottom performing right at the bottom, and trying to figure out what it is, which ones they were clicking through on, which ones were performing best and which weren't. And what I actually found were that the short and snappy emails, the one that really got to the point, were really emotional. They performed best. And I guess the key takeaway is that I'm the animal rights campaigner. They're not. They don't need to get bogged down in legislation and know the nitty-gritty detail. They just need to know that orcas are suffering. What can they do? And that really stood out to me. And I think I always thought it was really important to share every single aspect of a campaign with our supporters and to share every single information with them. But actually, they don't need to know that. They just need to know what they can do. And so actually, what I found, I've included a little snippet of one of our emails here, and that's just the way that I found works best, is breaking the text down into small bite-sized chunks, breaking it up, having multiple call to action buttons. Don't be scared to ask them to take action twice in one email. I found a lot of people just click on that very first button and don't even read the rest. They go through, they understand the problem, and immediately they want to help. So yeah, definitely keeping it short, snappy, lots of buttons, lots of images, nothing too long. Any long forms of text just, I think, overwhelmed our supporters and their attention span just switched off. So yeah, basically keep it simple, no boring stuff. The results basically were that 100,000 people sent emails to Jet2 holidays. The average click rate of this campaign was 11%, which was pretty good. And Jet2 Holidays no longer sells tickets to marine parks. So it was a pretty good result overall, and we're really happy with that. Any key takeaways, I think for you guys, I would say, is just think about that so what formula, those 4 key points. Know your audience, export that spreadsheet, try and figure out what they like. You always use new hooks, even if it's just things like tomorrow is Badger Day. I don't know, maybe you have like a Badger campaign and you can always use those kind of hooks. And yeah, finally, if anything I want you to take away from this talk today is don't go to marine parks who keep orcas in prison, or dolphins too, and go vegan if you're not already. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks very much. So please use the Slido app to ask any questions. There's a few there, so I shall start with the first one. So were you worried that when you sent 100,000 emails to Jet2, were you worried that they might just block them and not see the avalanche of emails?
Yes, and they did. We definitely use the reports that Engaging Networks set through, and we monitor that very closely, and so we do replace the targets. We always start with the key target, so the CEO, and then maybe sometimes we have to fall back to the CFO, and we do change those targets up and mix them around, and it does take quite a lot of effort, but it's definitely worth it.
And
oh, sorry, I had one more thing to add. That's also why I did the social media call to action quite a lot as well, is asking them to comment on socials and post on X too, because that's something they can't ignore and they can't block. They can delete them though, so just keep doing it. Again, that's why you do it monthly, just keep bombarding them.
Great. And out of all the targets, why do you choose Jet2 in particular over other corporate targets?
So we've targeted other people in the past, and we're actually now using the momentum from Jet2. So these 100,000 people, we're calling on them to message TUI next. So we've turned our focus on TUI. So we are targeting everyone in the industry. It's just a case of one campaign at a time. We need to put all of our effort into one travel provider, so we do it one at a time. We have targeted other people in the past, and we've had other victories. Jet2 and TUI were 2 of the last larger scale travel providers. The others are quite small ones, so we're targeting the larger ones first before we turn our attention to the small. But don't worry, we'll get to the others as well.
So sort of one by one approach.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
they all topple.
Just means that we can throw everything we have at that campaign, and yeah.
and more about Jet2. So did they ever talk to you about the campaign? You said they stopped advertising for those parks, but did they ever talk to you about what had happened? Or
they did, yeah. We our corporate outreach team actually were in close contact with them, and we had a few sympathetic people within the organisation who really wanted to make that switch immediately, but kind of for other reasons were maybe blocked by other Jet2 staff members. So we were in constant kind of conversation with them behind the scenes, and they came to us first to let us know that they were going to stop selling tickets before we kind of went like, yeah, great victory. We had that conversation with them first.
That's great. So good victory. And did you ever include sort of multimedia or anything sort of creative beyond, text to make emails more engaging?
We include images, definitely. I think I'm maybe slightly hesitant to include things like GIFs or videos, just purely because a lot of our supporters are a little bit older, and I don't think they're necessarily with email providers that would support that. So I kept it kind of simple. So it was usually just text and images.
And from what I've seen, I know Peter sometimes uses quite sort of more sort of extreme images, if you see what I mean. So
graphic, yeah. One of the other things I learned from exporting all of that data from engaging networks, definitely the more emotional images produce far more clicks. This is actually probably, the image I had of the Orca is probably not the best image representation. I think some of the sadder images, heartbreaking ones, they definitely get more click-throughs. So that's kind of usually what we lead with.
Actually, this leads into this question quite nicely. So when you did export that data, you said you looked at the email length as one kind of criteria to see what was effective. And obviously images was another one. Was there anything else that you analysed?
Yeah, time of day that we sent emails as well. I definitely found anything after 2 p.m. didn't really quite work as well as things before. I do think that changes though, because there was a period of time where 10 p.m. was weirdly the best time for us to send emails. So again, I think it's just always revisiting, I guess, like external life changes, like COVID and lockdown and things like that can always impact how people are using their emails and when they're checking their phones. But at the minute, I'm finding before 2 p.m. So, but that was another thing. Send time, length, the amount of buttons, definitely as well. I found the more buttons we included, the better. And graphic images, yeah, they were the things that I found.
And did you actually use sort of split tests as well to say test number of buttons, sort of in a sense, or did you just use historical?
I split test every email with every subject line, every email. We've tested so I think a lot of it we kind of just I looked at this big Excel spreadsheet and figured out which ones were performing best based on that. But I have split tested that theory too and sent long versus short and found it just affirmed what I thought.
Excellent. Thanks very much. So a few more questions sort of still coming in, actually. So what does the approval process look like for your team in relation to email?
We have a really strict approval process. We are quite a large organisation, and I do think people are reading our stuff, so it is quite a lot, so we do have to be quite careful about what we say, and it goes through maybe 3 or 4 rounds of review before we send it to an editing team, so it is quite strict. However, we are a very agile team, so even though we have a very long review process, it's really speedy. It's really quick, and I can get an email out in an hour or 2 if we needed it. Because I do think using those events and making things timely. If an orca dies in the morning, we need to send that email really, really rapidly. So despite having a very long approval process, it goes very quickly.
Great, thanks. And so for your supporters who sort of done the action, they shared on social, did you email them anything after that?
Yeah, I emailed those supporters all the time, every month, pretty much. I like to include them in the campaign updates, so I would, any kind of information I could give them, if the celebrities joined the campaign, I would let them know. I think one thing is that, as someone yesterday mentioned, the supporter journey is not being linear, and I really agree with that. I don't think it's a case of you ask them to sign it once, and then you ask them to do socials, and then that kind of, you leave them to it. I think you can keep going back. And even sometimes I would say, actually, we've changed our target. We're now sending an email to someone else. Can you take action again? And the same with the socials. I'd say, post again, please, because they've got an AGM tomorrow. We need the attention on them. So I definitely think you can keep going back to those supporters and keep them engaged. I do just think that you have to have a reason to do so. So having a new hook or there has to be some sort of reason that you're going back to them.
And those emails, does every email have to sort of have an action, or were some just general updates? Or?
I don't think I would ever send an email without a call to action, mainly because our supporters just love it. They're very active. They're very enthusiastic, which I love about them. I think they're brilliant. They're so keen to help. And so just simply for my supporters, it's not really for me, it's more just for them. I think I wouldn't want to disappoint them by sending an email that they can't do anything about. So I tend to always give them, something to do off the back of it.
That's great advice. And there's one more question here, which is, so for organisations, if you have advice for this, who have a lot of supporters who don't use social media, what would you recommend as a sort of alternative call to action?
Yeah, a lot of our supporters don't either. There's a couple of things I do. One is I've asked them to forward the email to a friend, maybe forward it to a friend who does have social media. Or two, for example, some of them don't have social media, but maybe I would ask them to share the action alert, so not just forward the email, but share our action alert via email or via WhatsApp. Maybe they've got WhatsApp, so they could do that. There's definitely always a couple of things, but usually it involves sharing and asking them to kind of spread the message.
That's great. Well, thanks very much, and thanks everyone for their questions. So please give Chelsea a round of applause. Thanks very much.